what got into me, but I wanted to draw a clone trooper, so I did. And it was going to be just a Revenge of the Sith clone trooper. A very typical classic helmet. Didn't go that route. Instead, I picked the helmet from Republic Commando, Boss. So it's all drawn, I just need to color it in. And I researched, and I researched, and I researched, because, you know, I want to make this thing as accurate, realistic as possible. And the best thing that I could come up with is that his armor is orange and white, and his gloves are black. So, that shouldn't be too hard. When you draw white armor, you can't just leave it white, you have to put some sort of color on it. And that usually is in the form of gray. Now, there's different shades of gray just depending on the hue, the tone. So you've got cool gray, you've got warm gray, you've got blue gray, you've got green gray, you've got yellow gray, red gray. There's all sorts of different grays to catch a different color. I'm looking at a suit of armor that's white and it's got orange decals. My first instinct is to go with warm gray in order to grunge up the suit because he's fairly dirty. However, just looking at my reference picture, he's in an industrial hallway. There's no way you're gonna gather dust in an industrial hallway. You're gonna gather like mechanical grease and stuff like that. So we're actually gonna go with like a blue-gray. He's orange, but I'm not gonna go with this bright or fluorescent orange. You're actually looking more for a really orangey brown. So I'll pull this terracotta to try something called potato brown. That's fairly warm as well. Something called a burnt orange. Anything that has a little bit more of brown mixed up in it. Not just going to be one shade of brown. We've got to have at least 3 because you've got your highlights, midtones, and your darks. Okay, the white armor has been covered with the blue grays, but there's a lot of undersuit that's underneath the obvious decorative plates of armor, and those we're going to go in with cool grays because it's black. And usually I denote black with cool grays. Now he's got that cool faceplate, which is a glowing blue, and it's also just a little grungy as well. It looks a little fogged up. So I'm gonna try and gather just a couple of different kinds of blues, just depending. I think maybe from my other set, I've got some. We'll try some blues from there. This is also a very important color right here. I use it in practically every single drawing. It's important to test out your colors, so I'm going to test out all of the stuff that I collected for orange, and I think that one actually hits it pretty well. Okay, so I'm going to go with this color, and this color, all right here. I think we can start. So I'm going to start by basically base coating everything in a color that's the lightest of the category. So that'll be these light colors right here. This blue-gray one is going to be used for the white armor. This green-gray one is going to be the brightest highlight in the visor. This cool gray 4 I'm going to use in all of the cracks and crevices that are not white armor. And of course finally I've got this yellow ochre that I'm going to use on all the orange decals. So the base coating is done. The only thing that I didn't base coat was his gauntlet, because the blue-gray that I chose as the lightest tone ran out. So I will deal with that with a darker color when we get there. So as you can see, it's, you know, it's splotchy. You know, that's okay. The more layers of marker that we put on top, the smoother it's gonna get. Really, there's only two things that I did special. One was to leave a bright highlight at the top. You know, they're inside an industrial, inside a ship, inside a hallway, whatever it is, and the lights are coming from the top. So we want to put a nice bright highlight on the top, and you can see that I wasn't thinking about that when I started, and then I remembered and picked it up, echoing that same curve with the gray, and I left these highlights on the gloves as well. Crenulations in the armor, I put shadow under each ridge because that shows that the armor has different levels. It's not just one flat breastplate. The next step now is to go in with the next level of darker colors, the most exciting of which is going to be this turquoise, because I'm going to start doing the glow effects. And when I put the dark colors in, basically these guys, they're the midtones, they're not the dark tones, so they are actually going to take up the most space. So basically everything that I've laid down, I might just cover over, but I at least have the first bright color to leave a highlight. So like I would, for example, when I start, I would leave that as a highlight and I would go around it. Oh, actually it looks like I'm gonna need a different color. They're the same color. Hold on one sec. I would use my next dark color to basically leave a highlight right there, and I would just start, you know, coloring in around it. Same thing for that top highlight right there. I probably would take it like that, and then, you know, color in the rest right here. So this color is just ever so slightly darker, which is nice because I don't want it to turn brown. The base color that I picked, I wish that there had been a little bit more brown in there. So this is good that the mid-tone is not really very much different from the bright tone that we put on. And of course, basically the rest of the way, I'm just gonna keep remembering that the source of light is coming from the top. So by necessity, everything on the top is going to be brighter, everything on the bottom will be darker, maybe except for, I will feel free to put more highlights or more brightness right here on this chest ridge, just because it comes out further, and this palm is going, because it's turned away from the light, is going to be much darker. Okay, this is fun. All my gray markers are dying, so we're gonna have to have some sort of change of plan, maybe with how dark things are getting. Maybe I will have a second light source, who knows, but for now, let's color in the white armor. So hopefully, if this marker doesn't die on me too, we'll be able to do some armor. This area of the helmet is directly underneath his hand. It is being shaded from the lights above, so it's going to be pretty dark. I'm just gonna start here, and I'm just gonna color that in solid. At this point, so much of the face has been blocked, I'm not even sure what part of the helmet that is anymore, but basically anything that is touching the hand is going to be colored in with this darker color, except for this part right here, is because he doesn't have his hand flat up against his face, so there is a little bit of space and there is light trickling in underneath. So I will start from the bottom here and just kind of work my way up until I think that maybe we should let it be. It's going to be at least as tall as these patches that we've already colored in. And then I'm just going to follow the shape of his hand to make that shadow. At this point, the shadow is not going to be very distorted because his hand is very, very, very close to his faceplate. There we go. Same thing here. This finger is not touching his face at all, so when I trace in the shadow, it'll be kind of more or less in the exact curve of his finger. And of course, same thing with the thumb. Okay, so this is interesting. This is basically directly, at the planes of the light coming down. This is on the same plane. It's straight up and down, right? So we actually could afford to just not shade it in if we wanted to, but we still have to reconcile this panel versus this panel. So I would just, this is typically how I reconcile it. I just chop it in half. Just let it go. I think that works pretty well. And I'm going to put a shadow underneath that rivet, and then underneath that one as well. And then finally here, this one I'm just going to color it in. I think it'll be fine that way. And the wrist, his wrist is shading this area, so I'll just kind of leave that gap there. I think that's pretty good. I mean, I could color it in if I wanted to, but I think that works pretty well. Okay, up here at the top of the helmet, I'm gonna put, maybe cut this existing shadow into thirds and color in that last third right there. And I'm gonna try to follow this line across so it's all very even. And we will mimic this gray line with a darker brown line later when we go in for the decals. Color that. And now his head is, the helmet, I guess the top of the helmet is pretty round looking at my reference picture, so I think I can afford to just curve it around without worrying too much about a flat part of the helmet. Because remember, we're trying to follow the contour of the helmet in order to use the shading to make it look 3D. This is part of the white helmet, so that's going to be blue-gray, not cool gray. Okay, now we get here to the gauntlet, which I was unfortunately unable to shade because my marker died. So, I think, well, definitely this part is going to be dark. This rim right here, because the gauntlet is not 2D, it's 3D, so it's got this chunky little edge right here. I'm gonna color that in. I left ambient light all over the place. Ambient light at the bottom of the fingers, even though I said it was gonna be shaded, but it's just nice to have a little bit of that light, maybe bouncing off from his armor. There's also some ambient light down here that I left behind. Right here and here. So I'm also going to follow ambient light with the gray. Unfortunately, I didn't really put too much work into a design, and it's a little too late to try to add more stuff on, so I'm just gonna make it very simple right here. I'm gonna also just leave a little white highlight right there. I think that'll be kind of nice. And then the rest is just brutish coloring in. First, I am going to have, I'm gonna have some ambient light as well down here. So let me just trace that in so I don't color over it. Like that. Just go up like that a little bit. Sure, like that. You don't need to watch that. Now, my blue-gray marker has also informed me that it's about to retire, which is annoying. I need a new set. I still have some areas that we need to color in, including right under this ridge. That's going to be fairly shaded, because I've got this point here, the light is hitting it, so the light is on this little rim right here, and because this is an angle down, that's going to create a pretty harsh shadow. And there's this little crenulation in his armor over here that I got straight from the reference picture, and that's all shaded in as well. Yes, the reference picture is also lighted from the top. This ridge also is fairly shaded to show that there's this plate right on top, and these two plates on the sides are depressed. But my markers are dying, but apparently there was enough juice left in them that I had to draw on myself. I wish that had gotten on the paper. I'm just gonna color this in, and now that we're going a little straight up and more straight up and down, I'm not gonna make that line as thick. I'm gonna just pull that in a little bit. And same thing with this. We'll start thicker at the top and then slim it down toward the bottom, because just because this plate is straight up and down versus this plate is gonna have a really thick band of shadow because it's basically going against the light. Now it's time for the faceplate. Thought I would just do a little bit more of an in-depth discussion of that instead of just coloring it in. Basically, when the glow is coming from the inside, or at least from the top ridge. Now I'm not sure if it's coming from the inside of the helmet or the top or the outside, but it's definitely coming from the top, with the bottom, which is hidden behind his hand, being the murkiest in color. So because this part is the source of light, we're not going to color that part in. This is the color of the light. This is going to be the source. It's pretty white, right? So I would just take my marker and, according to the reference picture, because it's a little bit of it's almost like his glass is all fogged up. He needs to clean it a little bit. I'm just going to trace around the source of light, using this turquoise to show what color that light is. Oh, at least this one's not dying. I don't use it often enough, I guess. There we go. Just like that. And the fun part now is, because his hand is right in front of that glow, we actually get to put some glow on his hand, like that. And on his gauntlet. That's fun. Okay, plan B. I have a different set of alcohol markers, and they are called basic. So they don't have a tint in them, which is a little unfortunate, but it's better than fighting with a dead marker. So hopefully they can be convinced, these two darker shades can be convinced to help me out and not die on me. The next step is going to go in with the dark tones, and there's going to be one more tone after that, and that is where the black is going to come in, but we want to be really, really sparing with that. So these are your dark tones. Again, I'm going to be focusing on shadows instead of highlights. So all the highlights have been complete. Now it's time to go in, with the crease of this hand. I'm not going to darken it as badly as I thought I was going to, but I want to put just enough dark gray on it to let you know that his gloves are not gray, they're black. There's just a lot of light going on, so it doesn't always look black. a lot of work into darkening up the glove, and it looks pretty good. It's starting to not look like a gray glove, it's starting to look like a black glove. This was a white gauntlet, and I put a lot of shadow on here, so it's starting to look like a gray gauntlet. So I think I'm going to stop there. If you notice, this is white armor, and really the only white parts on it are the highlights up here. The rest of it is basically, it's a suggestion, but it needs to be colored in, otherwise, like the background, it's going to look uncolored. For the orange decals, I didn't go with a brown dark tone. I went actually with a red dark tone, and that really helped to wake it up and say, hey, this isn't brown, this is actually red. So it was a good call. The last thing that we're going to work on is putting more darks here, here. I think I'm going to leave this one, even though in the reference picture it's black, but I'm going to take some artistic liberties, and I'm just going to leave it that way because I kind of like it gray. This part is also going to be pretty black because it's so dark, so deep there in the shadow. This again is also going to be very black. First I'm going to go in with the dark gray, and then we'll see what needs to be touched up with the black marker. Now it is time to go in with two colors, black and this dark blue. Because if you look at the reference picture, there's some clouding on the inside of that visor, so we're going to need to capture that. Black, I'm going to be very, very sparing with it because we've spent the whole drawing trying not to use black because we're trying to be a little bit more realistic and use grays to indicate black. However, in areas like this is in deep shadow, I would just throw that in just to kind of darken up what I couldn't get before. And this mouth on the helmet, I will also just color it black because the mouth needs to be black. I slipped a little bit, so now I have to make that line a little thicker. And I'm just gonna also just get in there. And actually, that's it. I think that's enough of an accent. So let's work on the clouding. The clouding all happens away from the light source. So we see the most clouding happening right here. And it jumps up. I'm just copying this one reference picture. I notice I also didn't color that corner right there, so I'm just gonna grab blue-gray. It's right there at the light. It doesn't need to be really dark at all. I'm gonna grab one more color just to darken up that clouding. The last thing I want to do is just color in the background, and it's just going to be a blank color because I hate drawing backgrounds. So I'm just going to go in there, and I picked yellow. You know, he's in an access hallway, probably interior of a ship. It probably is going to be gray, but there's so much gray going on already. Coloring the background gray is just gonna take away from all of that work that we just put in to do black gloves and white armor. So I picked yellow because, well, my first instinct is to go for red because I love red backgrounds, but he's already got red on his armor, and besides, I can't quite put him in a red hallway without any red accents on his, any red highlights on his armor, so that was a no-go. I could do the same blue, but I think that would just be too flat. And so I just kind of went with yellow because it's still a warm color, and we can still explain why he's in a yellowish background without having to put that color onto him after the fact. I suppose that's another thing that I can think about when I draw, is working the color of the background onto the character. You know what? I think we're done.